Good afternoon. This is Kurt Beckett, Chair of the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council, calling our July 15th regular meeting to order at 1:32 p.m. And Ms. Grantham, if you'd call the roll, please.
Certainly, Chair. Department of Commerce.
Aaron Peterson, Department of Commerce, present.
Department of Ecology.
Blake Nelson, present.
Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Present.
Department of Natural Resources.
Kate Dean, present.
Utilities and Transportation Commission.
Brian Ryberg, present.
For local government and optional state agencies. For the Hop Hill Solar Project for Benton County.
This is Adam File. I'm here.
For the Wallula Gap Project for Benton County.
Adam File here.
For the Goldeneye Best Project for Skagit County.
Robbie Eckroth, present.
For the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project for Skamania County.
Asa Lecky, present.
The City of Stevenson. The City of North Bonneville. Whoever that was, can you try to maybe mute and unmute once again and speak up, because that came in very robotic. It might have been. Okay, I can tell that was Harold Cook from the City of North Bonneville. I will let you know that your microphone came in very robotic, but I was able to understand that little bit. Thank you. Moving on to Klickitat County.
Jan Sokol, present.
Thank you. City of Camas. And Clark County.
Melissa Curtis is here.
Thank you. Moving on to Assistant Attorney Generals, John Thompson.
Present.
Zach Packer. And Talia Tewitt. Calling council staff who are anticipated to speak today, Dave Walker.
Present.
Marco Lowe.
Present.
Amy Hofkemeyer.
Present.
Amy Moon.
Present.
Joanne Snarsky.
Present.
Maria Belkana.
Present.
Kevin Taylor.
Present.
And Keith Quinata.
Present.
Moving on to operational updates, those who are anticipated to present today, Columbia Solar, or Columbia Generating Station, I apologize.
Support present.
They're present. Columbia Solar.
Present.
And is that Will DeTesso?
Yes, Will DeTesso and Macy Hockenberg.
Thank you. Goose Prairie Solar. And Ostria Solar.
John Volz, present.
And is there anyone present for the Council for the Environment?
Yuri Carol, present.
Thank you. And I see that Jeff Breckville from City of Stevenson raised their hand in chat saying that they are present. Is that correct?
That's correct. I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, there is a quorum for all councils.
Thank you very much. Council members, we have an agenda before us. Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. In the second, council agenda is on the table. I know of no changes. Are there any others from council? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the agenda as proposed, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll take that as an aye. And abstained. Okay, agenda is adopted. Moving on to the minutes, we have minutes from our regular June 17th council meeting before us. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Council Nelson. The minutes are on the table. I have 3 edits that I wanted to bring.
Here, this is Andrea Grantham for the record. Whenever I go to view on the Adobe, it is doing something very odd and showing a blank screen. So I'm going to refresh the council packet really quick.
Okay. And with that in mind, Council, I'll try to read just enough context. These are very ultimately minor, but I thought worth our time to correct, of course. And Ms. Grantham has these noted prior here, so we have these captured, so I'll move quickly. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. On page 24, line 23, we need to change the date from July to August. So it reads, we notified them early this month of the pending expiration in July of the current extension. The extension timing is August. So if we could change that from July to August, that's change number 1. Change number 2, moving on to page 28, which is the next page in a PDF. This is Commissioner Leckie rather than Skagit County, of Skamania County. That's line 11. Yes, Asa Leckie should read Skamania. And then the third, and I believe final, quick edit is in that same section, same page 28, line 16. We did one government-to-government consultation with Cold Springs. Well, I thought that was Warm Springs. Of course, it's not. It is Cowlitz. So if we could change that to Cowlitz, that would correct the minutes for those probably more important details. So those are my changes. Are there any others from council? Seeing none.
No, Chair, but may I ask a question? Just
Of course.
Curious protocol. I was not at the last meeting. Do council members tend to abstain from approving?
Yes, council members who are not present at a meeting do tend to abstain.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for asking. Any other changes? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the June 17th monthly meeting minutes as amended, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention?
Aye.
I'll abstain. I was not in attendance. Thanks.
So Council Dean and Council Pamplin are abstaining. And thank you both for your attention to that detail. Moving on then to our announcements. So first, and we'll get into this in a couple places in the course of the project updates and director update, but we will have no August meeting of the regular FSEC Council in August. So I just wanted to announce that here at the top of the order in case we lose any participants along the way. So there will be no regular August meeting of the FSEC Council. With that, let me then move to an honor to introduce the new FSEC director on behalf of both the council and the agency. As you have most have probably seen, but not on the cover of Time, at least yet, the new director, Marco Lowe, and certainly appreciate his interest and I think the good capability that he will bring to the agency. And certainly, most importantly, I want to thank all the staff and especially Dave Walker and Nabila Gomes, amongst several other people, and our administrative support team for helping to work through that interview process and now onboarding. And so that is a task unto itself. So with that recognition of staff as well as Marco, I would turn this to you, Director Lowe, for any remarks you would like to make.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chair. Marco Lowe, grew up here, went to high school, just at North Thurston High School down the road. So moved 4 minutes up since graduation. The child of two state worker. My mother was the demographer at OFM, and my father was Association of Counties his entire career. And I left state government in late 1999, so I'm kind of betraying my age, but it's really great to be back into the state family. But most importantly, in the last 10 years, my career has moved into energy. And what I realized very quickly, even working for an ancient steam utility in downtown Seattle, was that the 21st century will belong to energy. And the work at FSEC and all the departments that work with this important team are facing the challenges that we all are going to have to deal with. And it's very exciting to have this opportunity. And I thank Kurt and everyone that helped bring me on board. And I'm on day 2.5. And just the amount that I realize I don't know yet is overwhelming and also exciting. So I'm very proud and excited to be sitting here in front of you today.
Appreciate it. Council members, if you have any brief comments you'd like to add, happy to make space for that. And no obligation, but thought I should ask.
Well, welcome, Marco. Your background, I think, is an excellent perspective to bring to this 21st century discussion. I really appreciate your framing there, that this is the 21st century will belong to energy. I wrote that down and we'll probably steal that from you. So welcome. And
I think I stole it from somebody else.
All right. Looking forward to working with you.
Right.
If I may, Chair.
Oh, please, yes.
Welcome,
Councilor Dean.
Director Lowe. My husband had the privilege of working with you at the City of Seattle, and now I have the privilege of working with you here. So nice to see you again. And I am Well, I was the newest member. I believe I'm not anymore the newest member of this council, but just started a few months ago and said something very similar when I was here on my first meeting. I totally agree that it's really an honor to be able to work on this issue at this point in human history. So look forward to doing that with you. Welcome.
I'd like to say something, Chair Beckett.
Councilor Nelson.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, when I saw the job announcement go out, I joked to Chair Beckett, good luck finding that unicorn because the requirements of the job are so daunting. And but by gum, looking at your resume, I'm going to enjoy working with a mythical creature. I mean, that's
Some of that resume is true.
very good. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. All right, then we will, I'm sure, be hearing from Director Lowe on many occasions in the future. So we'll move on to the rest of the agenda. And importantly, we need to honor Councilmember and now former Councilmember Elizabeth Osborne, but not by too many days. Is Elizabeth online?
Yes. I'm here, Chair Beckett. Hello.
Hello. Well, Council Osborne, I will certainly turn this to you here momentarily, but as you have participated previously, there's practice here at the council to honor service of council members with a resolution. And so council members, before us, we have resolution number 362, which I believe will be on the website. We can make sure that it is so. But with that, I would entertain a motion to adopt resolution number 362, commending services of Elizabeth Osborne. Is there said motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve resolution 362.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you both. So I will just read a few highlights of this resolution with your support, Council Osborne. And so again, resolution number 362, commending services of Elizabeth Osborne, who was appointed to the FSEC Council by the Department of Commerce effective August 1, 2023, and served her term with great distinction until May 27, 2026. Ms. Osborne brought her considerable knowledge and experience to the council, gathering information, balancing impacts and mitigation measures, and arriving at clear decisions and recommendations for the governor on several projects. In particular, of note, Council Osborne participated in the Horse Heaven Project and Watoma Project adjudication meetings, including various public comment hearings for each with thoughtful inquiry and engagement. She, in particular, demonstrated dedication to her role through her considerable effort to catch up on the project process to date, joining the council just prior to the commencement of the adjudicative hearings for the Horse Heaven Wind project. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the Energy Facility Site Evaluation Council hereby recognizes Elizabeth Osborne's outstanding, unwavering, and faithful contribution to the council's siting and regulatory activities, and gratefully expresses its sincere gratitude for the commitment, dedication, and effort she's shown over the past 2 years and 10 months. And I would note that the current resolution does say 7 years, and while I think with her service, especially in Horse Heaven, it may have felt like 7 years, in fact, it was not. So with a friendly amendment that we will have the proper resolution that reads 2 years and 10 months, that is the motion before us. So if there are any further comments from council, I would ask for that, and otherwise soon I would call for the vote.
Yeah.
Council Roberg.
Well, just a great recognition. Appreciated getting the short time together of us on the council, Council Osborne or former Council Osborne. So just appreciate all that. Do have one friendly amendment that it is dated the 15th day of August, 2026, which should be the 15th day of July.
There we go. Thank you, Council Roberg. So with that amendment or addition, are there any other changes? Okay, so then all in favor of adopting resolution 362, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay, or excuse me, abstentions? All right, well, Council Osborne, thank you, and I would encourage a brief public service announcement amongst your remarks, which is to remind everyone of the Northwest Public Power Planning Council updated plan that I believe is not only coming forward, but out for public comment or soon will be. So most importantly, thank you for your dedicated contributions here at FSEC, and with that, I would turn this to you, Council Osborne.
Thank you so much, Chair Beckett and council members, and thank you to the FSEC staff. It's been a pleasure working with all of you, and the past members of the council are included in that as well. So thank you. This resolution was very kind of you, and I really appreciate it. And thanks also for the plug for the Northwest Power and Conservation Council's 9th power plan that will be released within probably about a month for a reasonably long public comment period, and we would love engagement from any and all of you on that when that time comes. So thanks for that as well, Chair Beckett.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and we will have a framed and corrected version as need be for hopefully your wall or wherever you most find it appropriate. So thanks again for joining us in your service. So with that, Council, we have a number of project updates as always, and today we will begin with the Columbia Generating Station. And I believe we are starting, I thought, with Kelly Elsathagan from Energy Northwest, but I also know we have Rick Garcia here around the table with us today, who's here to make a presentation on a evolving change, the extended power uprate presentation for the Columbia Generating Station. So whichever Energy Northwest staff person would like to begin, I will turn it to you.
We don't have any other, I'm Kelly Elsathagan for the record. We don't have any other updates other than the extended power uprate.
Very well.
Project update that Rick is going to provide.
Appreciate it. And thank you for making the trip to join us here in person today. So with that, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Chair Beckett, members of the councils and staff. For the record, my name is Rick Garcia. I am the licensing supervisor at Energy Northwest. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to speak a bit about our extended power uprate project. It's very much in keeping with your remarks, Director Lowe, and those on the council as far as expanding the electrical generation capacity. So this is something we're embarking on for Columbia Generating Station. If we'll go to the next slide, please. So this is just an informational overview. The genesis for this presentation was principally to speak to some questions that we received from FSEC staff as we help to educate the council and the staff that we'll be working with collaboratively over the next several years as we work to bring this project to reality. I am open to questions along the way or hold them to the end, whatever pleases the council. But I'm going to start by just sharing some background information and then, again, try and hit to specific questions that we were requested to address as part of this update. Next slide, please. Just some basics here about Columbia Generating Station. We are a General Electric boiling water reactor. We are located near Richland, Washington. Energy Northwest is a joint operating agency of the state of Washington. And we were initially licensed for a 40-year operating period. That initial license is from the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission that began in December of 1983. And we have renewed that once to add 20 years to that license. So we're currently operating under a 20-year extension valid through December of 2043. For purposes of FSEC, our original site certification agreement was issued in May of 1972. Next slide, please. I just want to start with just a picture, and we'll come back to this, but this is, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to come out and see Columbia Generating Station. This is an aerial view of our facility there. And like I said, I just kind of like to start with that so you get a picture in your mind, and we'll talk through some of the basics of how the plant operates and what we're going to be doing to it as part of our extended power uprate project. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just to start. Again, I'm not sure the background that the various members in the room and online have, but I wanted to start with just an overview of the boiling water reactor steam cycle. And I'm actually going to start on the steam cycle side of that, which is kind of the right half of this diagram. If you look at anything on the right half, right in the center is the turbine, and then the generator, condenser. All of that is not unique to nuclear, right? Any steam cycle plant, whether it's a gas boiler, a coal burner, they're all going to have that same right side. We call it the balance of plant type equipment. You're going to create steam. You're going to spin a turbine that's going to be connected to a generator to put electricity out on the grid. And then you're going to have a condenser there to reject the waste heat. There's, the steam cycle is not the most efficient process, but it's what we have as our dominant technology these days. But it's only about a 33% conversion rate between the thermal energy that we create in the steam and the electrical energy that we get out of it. And so there is the need to reject the waste heat, which is what you saw in the prior picture. And again, we'll go through this as we revisit that picture. But for all intents and purposes, all the portions to the right half of that diagram are not unique to the nuclear plant at Columbia. What is unique is everything on the left designated there in the containment structure, and it really just boils down to how do we make the steam, right? So in our case, we use nuclear fuel, and we run closed loop of water through the reactor to boil it and then create the steam for our turbine. So I just want to start with that overview just so that we're beginning with a common understanding as we start to speak about how things are going to change to enable us to produce more power. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we'll get into some of the questions that we were asked to address. The first one was, why is it called an extended power uprate? This really comes from our federal regulator, and they have different classifications of power uprates, and it's based on how much percentage of power you're changing. So you can see there's 3 classifications. There's the smallest of the batch, which are called measurement uncertainty recaptures. Those are typically just sharpening the pencil. There's not a whole lot of changes physically made to the plant or the way it's operated. Those get you less than 2% power change. There's stretch power uprates. Those are the mid-size ones. They're going to get you 2 to 7% increase in power output. And then there's the extended power uprate, which is greater than 7% power change. For us, we're looking at about a 12.5% net, which does land us in that bigger category of extended power uprate. And the extended power uprates typically also require physical changes to the plant, the systems, and then the way that it's operated. Any questions on that?
Maybe you'll get into this. Maybe this is what you're leading to, but what are the physical changes that are expected at the plant?
Yeah, we'll talk just high level. We don't have an exhaustive list, but we'll get to a later slide where we show where we are. This is a multi-year project. We started in earnest about a year ago, July of 2026, after we got our funding approval from Bonneville. And we're not looking to bring extra megawatts onto the grid until 2031. So we know some of the changes that will need to be made. We're still determining some of the others. So, but yeah, we'll get into that a little bit more, I think, in future slides. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So this just shows a history of what we have done at Columbia already. And then again, there's mixed units here. We have megawatts thermal, which is what our federal regulator tends to specify in our operating license. For our FSEC purposes, the site certification agreement does list both the megawatts thermal as well as the megawatts electric. But if you see on the right diagram, so we started with an original licensed thermal power of 3323 megawatts thermal. We have done the 2 smaller size uprates previously. We did a stretch power uprate, which was about a plus 4.9% for us in the mid-90s. And then more recently, in the late 2010s, we did a measurement uncertainty recapture, which was about not quite 2% for us. The other number that you'll see kind of in the middle here is original licensed thermal power. And so if you track the increasing value of that as you go up that diagram, you'll see, we originally went up to about 105%, now up to 106.7% of original licensed power. At the end of our extended power uprate, we'll be at 120% of the original licensed power of the unit. And then on the left-hand side there, you can see our output would be up to about 1,380 megawatts after that, coming out of that 2031 refueling outage. As a point of reference, the current level that we're at, that 1,200 megawatts, that's about enough power for about 1 million households, plus or minus 100,000 or so. So, like I said, you can see that we're going to be putting a pretty good chunk of extra power out there when we're done with this project.
On that note, with the extra power, is it anticipated that that changes the transmission interconnection or substation or transformer that's required at the plant?
There are some changes. We actually are coordinating with Bonneville Power already, so I imagine it's similar to much of the other projects that FSEC is regulating and has keeping an eye on, right? There's grid studies that are done with Bonneville. We're in a batch. They have different phases. They call them cluster studies. I think they kind of group them by regional area, and they assess who's going to bring what power on at what timeline. And so we just passed through like a phase 1 cluster study. I think we were waiting to hear yesterday if they were going to need to do a restudy. So what happens there is all the entities that believe they're going to change power to the grid kind of raise their hand and tell Bonneville, hey, we're planning to do something. And then there's a vetting process where, you know, some of these will be plans that never come to fruition. And Bonneville kind of assesses what will their system handle, what changes would they have to make. So we are deep in the middle of that. That is part of the process. And it's something that we have to share with our federal regulator as part of the federal regulatory approval. As far as, we've done our grid studies, this is what it showed. The grid operator is ready to receive our power as well as the plant's ready to produce it. Does that answer your question?
Mostly, I think any upgraded transformer requirements for.
I don't believe our transformers specifically are requiring updates. They are, the plant is about 40 some odd years old. I believe I heard our transformer is about 20 years old. We replaced them midpoint. We're licensed to operate until 2063, so they're kind of at end of service again. The transformers are going to be replaced over one of the next few outages, but I don't think those in particular need to be upsized. We are upsizing the generator, which again, our generator is kind of at max right now, but it is also kind of end of life, right? You get a 40-year-old plant, and some things have been touched once or not at all, right? And so. Yeah, there's as we work on this project, it's a combination of what do we need to do to prepare the plant to produce more power, as well as keep it viable through the anticipated length of operation, right? Which is currently 2063 with an option to extend, or I'm sorry, 2043 with an option to extend to 2063 or even beyond.
I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it. Is there a general duration of that interaction with Bonneville on that very important work? I realize to make sure the grid's ready to receive power, and it may iterate a little bit, but is there a time length ultimately that's associated with that?
I don't have the specifics. That's one of our sub projects. So EPU, you can think of EPU. That's our abbreviation for extended power uprate. It's kind of a mega project with lots of sub projects under it. We do have a project manager that's focused on that and is working that to a schedule that supports getting the decisions that we need from Bonneville and allowing them time to do any upgrades they might need to do. We do have one benefit compared to the others in our cluster study in that we're an existing generating unit, right? And so I think that helps as far as there's already infrastructure there. They're not having to run new infrastructure to tie in a brand new generating source. But again, we're treated as part of that cluster, so we will move together in that batch. People will fall off along the way, right, as business proposals just don't pan out economically or whatever the other drivers are. But yeah, it's a multi-year process.
Okay. Well, I realize that may start to get beyond a little of the FSEC scope, but certainly appreciate some visibility as that progresses, mainly just because there's a learning there. There's an insight that ultimately maps to other things. There's only one Columbia Generating Station, so I realize there's some one-off, some unique aspects to the work, but the insight's valuable, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I think we can move to the next slide. Okay, so this is more on the motivation for doing the power uprate now. And it really boils down to meeting our regional needs. The Clean Energy Transformation Act, state legislation, which was passed in 2019 and is driving us towards non-carbon emitting sources by 2045, which Columbia does classify as a non-carbon emitting source. And you can see the timeline of the CETA there kind of in the middle, above the timeline of Columbia's current authorized, operation through 2043 with, a desire to stretch that to 2063. And then you also see the index of where our extended power uprate would come online in 2031. So you can see, even without a license extension, right, we're going to have over a decade of putting additional non-carbon emitting power on the grid to meet regional energy needs, which does align very well with the state legislation there. And then again, if we extend the license, then it's even longer that we're helping support the state's energy goals. Any questions on that? Okay, we'll go to the next slide.
Please.
Okay, so this is just a little bit of history to explain, again, why an EPU makes sense for us at this point. So as we took, our understanding of where the state's going with energy policy and look at our existing unit and whether we can do our part to meet those goals, one thing we did was look at how have other reactors across the country, what have they done with regards to getting more power out of their units? So this is actually something that's been done quite regularly. There are 31 operating boiling water reactors across the U.S. And as you can see from this diagram, a good majority of them have gone and raised their power more than we have. Columbia is the one on the box towards the right end of this waterfall graph. And you can see many of our peers are at that 120% or even, 115-ish or a couple even up to 122%. So, one thing to understand about the boiling water reactors, the domestic fleet, they are all fairly common in design. It's a single vendor, General Electric. The PWRs are more numerous, but there's more vendors involved. But we saw this as very mature technology. There's certainly understanding of how to do this. We are working with GE. They're supporting this, the safety analysis and the other things that have to happen for us to make this a reality. So we have a well-blazed path that we're able to follow to get to, a pretty regularly done type of modification to these types of generating assets. Next slide, please. So in general, just takeaways here, right? We recognize as well growing demand for electric power here in the Northwest, where we found that, there is extra capacity in our unit. These were generally built with, extra capacity, and it's just a matter of some modifications. We don't have to do radical change outs of the way the operator is designed or operated. It's slight, modifications to make it ready to do a little bit more power. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this slide, there's a lot of things going here, so I'll just try and step through it a little piece at a time. As I mentioned earlier, we've been, actively working the project since July of 2025. So you'll see on the top there is a blue bar showing our design phase. We have identified some things that we know are having to change. We're still figuring other things out as we assess how capable are the existing systems to make, to operate in the conditions that would allow us to produce more power. That's going to stretch on for several years. I'm going to jump now kind of to the green arrow that's in the middle of everything. And that kind of represents the ongoing operation of Columbia. And on there, you'll see green dots, which represent our refueling outages. So one thing to understand about nuclear power is, we are on 24/7, and we tend to run, when we load up new fuel, we want to run 2 years straight before we stop and take the unit offline and do maintenance. So it's almost like, if you're familiar with racing, right, that's our big pit stop. Once every 2 years, new fuel goes in, we're going to do repairs on systems. If we've decided to modernize the system, those are the small windows that we have. every odd calendar year in the spring to get in and make major changes to our plan. So recognizing the totality of what it'll take to get to EPU, we've decided to split that out over 3 refueling outages. So a little bit, here in 2027, an increasing amount in 29, and then 2031, and so that works out well with our design strategy, right? Is the things we know early, we might do early, and as we sort other things out, to get work into those refueling outages, you've got to plan it, you've got to get into the schedule with other planned work that this plant is doing. So this is our approach to, gradually getting the plant prepared to produce more power in 2031. The little star above the green line kind of represents where we anticipate to be coming online with the extra megawatts. That's in June of 2031. That's the planned end of our 30th refueling outage. And then the purple line is what we call implementation. And I want to be clear, implementation is just things that we're doing to get ready for the future state of the plant. Anything that we do as part of implementation will be within the bounds of the existing regulatory approval, the regulatory basis that we're allowed to operate the plant. So that doesn't really get changed till we get into the regulatory approvals band, right? So we have an outage coming up next spring. Anything we change that is maybe built bigger or more capable for EPU, we're not going to take advantage of the extra capacity in the system until we need it, until we're authorized to use it when we have all the regulatory approvals. So the analogy I like to throw out here is if you think about, take like a highway, a 2-lane divided highway that's going to be upgraded to an expressway, right? If you've seen that type of work, you'll see side work going on, right? They're going to build the extra lanes on the side. The thing's going to stay in service the whole time, which is kind of how we operate Columbia, right? We only are out for, the duration of the outage varies, but only every couple of years do we actually truly shut down for an extended amount of time. All the rest of the time, the unit is in service. So we're going to build things or modify things alongside, but just like that highway, if it's being expanded, right? Nobody's running on the extra lanes until they're truly ready, right? Until they've been, authorized and commissioned and studied and they're ready for service. And that's the same way we're approaching this. That implementation phase will be little changes to systems here and there, but nothing will be operated to a new regulatory basis until we have that in hand. And so that's where we get to that middle band there, that yellow band. We anticipate starting the formal regulatory approval process in the second quarter of 2028. And then we want to have that completed by the fourth quarter of 2030, which gives us a little bit of time, a few months before our 2031 outage. We want to know that we're truly authorized and that those final modifications we'll do in the spring of 2031, we'll be able to use them at the end of that outage. I think I'll stop here before I cover the rest of it and see if there's any questions on that. Just wanted to kind of lay out how this is going to work and what we're envisioning.
Council members, questions or discussion? Certainly can add to that, but I'll defer to you first. Council Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure who to direct this question to. Perhaps you, Rick, perhaps Dave. I won't put Marco on the spot just yet. But can you help me better understand? I understand you're largely regulated by the feds, but can you help me understand if FSEC has a role in this, and if so, what that is?
Yes, I think we will probably get more directly to that in a few slides where we can speak to the role that FSEC played in our prior power uprates and then what we anticipate in the future. But absolutely, FSEC does have a role. The one thing I will say, right, we view this, us being here, sharing this information as the first of many engagements with FSEC to ensure that, the information that we need to provide to FSEC is understood and that we're giving it to FSEC with adequate time to do whatever reviews and ask questions and understand what they need to before they authorize us. So,
thank you.
Yep. I will say, there is, if you do look at the federal approval side, they do as part of their process, and again, I'll cover this in a little more detail on a future slide, they are looking to know that we had state consultation before they sign off. And so we do that timeline in the yellow bar I have where we've got the regulatory approvals. We would like to have FSEC's approval sequence to occur before the final federal approval, so that that portion of the federal approval, they call it a safety evaluation report, can state that state consultation was performed. Washington State is on board with this, and so are we as the federal regulator, right? So that's just a nuance that we'll, try and sequence it. And again, if this timeline, if we need to pull formal engagement to the left with FSEC, we're happy to do that. This is built, the timeline of 2+ years is built around what we saw historically for federal approvals on the power upgrades. There's been some changes on the federal level. They're actually going to be doing them probably in about half the time of what we thought it would be. But again, we're sticking to the original schedule because the project was built around this, 30-ish month period of this is when, it'll drive design. You see that the design line is kind of tapering off as we enter the formal regulatory, because we need to know what's going to happen to the plant. So we can be communicating with the regulators, like, this is what we're asking you to look at that will be the future state of the plant when we're finally done, right? Yep. Okay, so let me talk to kind of the bottom half of the slide. It's the sub-bullets there. And this kind of gets a little bit to what systems are needing to change, right? So most of the changes are going to be internal to the operating plant. So conceptually, we're not changing the underlying technology or how the reactor is operated. We're really just pushing more mass through the system. So more total pounds of mass, more steam created to drive the turbine, the turbine and the generator to produce a little more electricity. So fundamentally, the plant's going to operate the same. It's just you have to look at things like, okay, this pump is already producing all it can, and it contributes to the mass flow through the system. Well, I need a bigger pump, right? There's some support systems that, one is a condensate filter demand system, which helps ensure we have clean water to go through the reactor. That one, again, is not going to have the capacity to handle more mass through the system. So we're expanding that capability. So the majority of the changes are going to be internal to the plant itself. But I did want to highlight some of the ones that have more, that are, I would say, are more likely to have environmental type interfaces. Those are going to be our ultimate heat sink and our cooling towers. And on the next slide, we'll see a picture of these. So I'm just going to talk to them now, and then we'll pull up the picture and talk some more. We're also potentially going to change our standby service water system, and then plant service water and tower makeup. So a lot of these are open air systems that have water flowing through them to manage the waste heat, right? And so I think now would be a good time to go ahead to that picture as we can talk through some specifics here. Okay, so I'm going to start with the standby service water system. That's the red rectangle you see on the picture here. What that is a couple of open air ponds that we are required to maintain for long-term cooling of the plant in the event that we had some sort of transient. So we are sited near the river, but we do not rely on the river for long-term cooling. It's those two fixed volume ponds. It's an engineered system designed to operate for 30 days post-accident, kind of on an island, right? So we assume for our federal regulatory basis that we don't actually make up water from the river. We just operate with what we start with in those ponds over 30 days. So the plant's designed to that. Again, I highlight it here because it's an open air system, right? It is not normally in service. It is for emergency cooling purposes, but we do run surveillances on it. The ponds themselves, you can kind of see those ring-like structures in there. They're giant spray rings. So we use spray cooling to, as evaporative cooling to help provide the cooling to the plant as we need it. So again, you've got to run surveillances. They are treated, those are chemical treatment on the ponds. We're not looking to make more ponds or anything, but potentially, right, changes to that the ponds communicate with each other, changes to the way they crosstalk to each other, possibly more flow through the system if it were in operation or even being surveilled, right? So that's one of the areas I wanted to highlight as potential environmental impacts. I'm going to jump to the yellow oval right now. So that's what we call the power block, the reactor building, turbine building, and the other buildings associated with that. The majority of the changes are going to be internal to those buildings, right? New pumps, larger condensate filter demon system, like I said, we're adding some processing vessels there. And then I'll jump over to the blue triangle. So that's our
Real quick before you go there, I think you've answered this, but I just want to be very clear. There are changes and upgrades or modifications both inside containment and outside containment. Is that correct?
Inside containment, there's a little bit.
Sounds like most of it is outside of the containment unit.
It's within the building. So containment is a very, it's the heart of the facility. Giant concrete steel vessel that, keeps the nuclear components contained. But then we have, support equipment in the buildings around that. So the tallest buildings are reactor building, kind of on the back side's a turbine building, right? So there's changes in the turbine building, there's changes to pumps in the reactor building. So it is kind of a mix, but yeah, I would say the majority is internal to the buildings that you see within that yellow oval. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I want to kind of highlight some of the water systems that are, and some of these are explicitly described in the site certification agreement. There's discussions about our cooling towers, which was the next one I was going to talk about. That's in the blue triangle, right? There's 6 of those. They're forced convection towers. And again, as you can see clearly, they're exhausting waste heat in the form of water vapor. Again, we anticipate some changes to that because, again, we're running more thermal energy through the system, so the waste heat is going to go up. Not shown on this, like I said, is the tower makeup system, which is where we draw water in from the river, so we do have to make up evaporative losses across the various systems, and that's, interface with the Columbia River, and then plant service water is kind of, it's hard to show that, but that's what has the cooling towers communicate with the power block, the components in the power block that need cooling. That would include the condenser, right? So there's piping that runs between the blue triangle and the stuff in the yellow oval. So I'll pause here again. That's a high-level overview of some of the systems I think are most likely to have environmental changes to them. But again, we at present, I think we're up over 24 sub-projects to EPU managing different changes. And then there's also projects that are being done as part of our life cycle management, so keeping Columbia as viable through 2043 or beyond. There's projects that are happening just to keep the plant good, long, healthy life. So it's a combination of changes that'll be happening over the next several years that'll ultimately prepare us for more power.
Me too.
Sure, Councilor.
Sorry if I missed, did you state the source of water, and curious if you anticipate needing more water with this up power?
Yeah, so we do, we have pump houses on the river. They're a few miles from the plant. In December, this is there's a lot of things are very intertwined here as far as we have to figure out what this system needs before you know what that system needs. So cooling is kind of towards the tail end, right? Because you got to decide if I need a bigger pump or bigger diesels, well, they're going to need more cooling. Until I've got all that sorted out, I can't really tell you all the cooling. We had some preliminary numbers that we sent to staff in December. I'm going to look here and see if I can find those. We may not have had actual values. I know we've got some here on estimated changes to discharge, so there is some blowdown off those cooling towers. I'm not actually seeing it here. Oh, no, I'm here. I'm sorry, here it is. Preliminary studies estimate makeup flow from the river will increase from about 15,000 gallons per minute to 17,000 gallons per minute. And that's just to make up, normal system losses. Not a substantial change, but an actual change in numbers.
And that's a surface water right that is secured with the property? Is that a requirement?
Yeah, so there is, we have already started some discussions with Ecology on the future water needs for Energy Northwest as an agency. We have our power upgrade going on as well as a new nuclear initiative. And I think the plan is to address those collectively at the agency level, not necessarily at the project level. And those discussions have started with Ecology. Any other questions about systems or what we're anticipating changing? And again, as we get further into the design phase, we can certainly come back with more details as we flesh out specifics of individual projects. We're happy to have discussions with FSEC along the way.
I have a couple comments, but I was holding them towards the end when you were complete with your presentation. So
Okay, I got a couple more slides, I think. So we'll go to the next one. Just some more history here, right? I mentioned the previous, I had a waterfall graph that showed all the other units just that have done that. I just want to emphasize this is something that, the first power upgrades, there were 3 different flavors, if you remember, the small, medium, large size. Those started back in the 70s. So the concept of taking an existing reactor and preparing it to produce more power, that's been done for decades, right? The federal regulator, NRC, has approved 171 different upgrades, including 2 for us, right? And then you can see that the amount of megawatts that you get from that is pretty substantial. So again, we feel like this is a good time for us to do our part. The unit is capable of it with a little bit of work. And so this is our history and why we're going after this. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share here a little bit about the federal regulatory approval process, mostly for information. So when we're dealing with federal approval, we submit what's known as a license amendment request. That is driven by Tennessee Fire Part 50.90 of the Code of Federal Regulations. And what that is it's a request to change our operating license. So as we work on that, we'll have a series of pre-application meetings. We've already had one with the NRC in April of 24. We're hoping to have another one later this year. And what we'll do during those is we'll start discussing what we're planning to do, and we're going to align with our federal regulator on what information they need to receive in order to assess our plans and to approve them. At some point, and for us, we're anticipating this will be in about July of 2028, we will submit a formal package, which is going to contain information about how the future plant operation at those extended power upgrade conditions is going to be safe and within existing design and operating margins. And then within 45 days, the NRC does what's known as an acceptance review. And that's really just the regulator not doing detailed review, but saying, you have provided me everything that we need to do our formal detailed review, and we're starting a regulatory approval clock. In this case, once they start that clock, the next bullet says they've committed to 12-month review time. And during that review, there's several things that may happen. We have what's called audits, where they can be virtual or in person, where we're going to share technical information that wasn't part of the formal package, but maybe their technical staff wants to see some details on calculations or other things. As I mentioned, sometimes they want to come out and lay eyes on systems themselves. So there's an audit period that can occur in there. And then we have formal requests for additional information, which is going to be formal questions submitted in the public domain on the docket, as we call it. They're going to formally ask us a question. We're going to formally respond to it. And the reason for that is that at the end of this process, when they issue their approval document, their safety evaluation report, anything that is material to that decision has to be on the docket, right? It has to be docketed, formally provided to us to them, either as part of the original law or as a request for additional information. Also, what's going to happen during that 12 months, there's an opportunity for public comment. These are posted in the Federal Register, and public comments are solicited and entertained. And then, as I mentioned, state consultation. If you look historically, so every time we change the operating license, we go through this process. Historically, for us, at Columbia, state consultation has included State Department of Ecology, Department of Health, and FSEC, depending on the specific change that we're requesting. So that's driven by another part of the CFR, 10 CFR 50.91. And then there's also National Environmental Policy Act consideration, which, the NRC as our lead regulator, as an operating nuclear plant, takes the lead on that. I will say that is likely to change. We've seen some draft changes to the way the NRC is going to approach NEPA reviews. Those just hit the street within the past week here, and the federal government is doing a pretty large amount of regulatory change, with a lot of these changes anticipated to be rolled out by the end of this year. So certainly different rules than we've seen historically for extended power uprates, and different rules will be in effect by the time we're into the formal licensing process. As I mentioned, the tail end of this process is the issuance of a safety evaluation report, which kind of summarizes the basis, how the regulator came to the conclusions that they're going to authorize our change, and then we get an actual amendment to the operating license. For FSEC, as I mentioned, we are here. We've been talking with staff already. This is our first opportunity to talk with council. So I'm saying we're certainly engagement ongoing, and then happy to collaborate on a timeline that is reasonable and allows us, the opportunity to provide the information we need to FSEC and the other interfacing state agencies. Any questions on this?
Council members? Council Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Beckett, and thank you, Mr. Garcia. Very much appreciated coming so early into the process so we can have a better understanding of the project increase here. So my understanding was a lot of these efficiencies, the added power is going to be through basically putting more water into the system, more the turbines forcing more over the control rods. Is there any plans to basically modify the reactor or add any control rods to the reactor?
No, the reactor itself, I don't have it on the material that I have here, but there is one thing that's occurring over the next 3 refueling outages. We are going to a newer model of fuel from GE. We use GE fuel in our reactor. We use what's known as GNF, Global Nuclear Fuel number 2. We're going to the number 3 version of that. But again, we don't need that for review. It's something the station had already decided. There's actually a GNF4 out, I think, and we're slowly catching up to the state of the art in fuel design. That's something that is going to happen, but it's not. It's our nuclear fuels group that is doing that change, and it certainly doesn't hurt us. I'll put it that way. But the base reactor, no major changes to the way it's designed, the way it's operated. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Yep. Okay, I think I just got one more real slide here, so we'll go to that one. So this was based on some of the questions we were asked to speak to, and these are very qualitative at this point, still being determined final numbers, right? But so, and this really hits on things that are kind of addressed in the existing site certification agreement. So these are the things we anticipate we'll have the most discussions with FSEC on. There will be an increase in the thermal megawatt output, which is again listed in the SCA. Wastewater discharge, we're expecting a slight increase, but still be within the existing NPDES permit. And I should mention, we do have a permit renewal coming along the way here as part of just the normal 5-year permit renewal on NPDES. And we've already started talking about how we approach that with the understanding that, before the next 5-year renewal, we will, if everything gets approved and implemented, we will be producing higher power before we come to a next 5-year renewal period. So we are already starting to have those discussions about the best way to make sure that the permit accommodates, a couple of years of current operation and then a couple of years later shifts to higher power output. So back to the list there, blowdown temperature, we're expecting a slight increase, but again, within the existing NPDES permit levels. River withdrawal, slight increase. We already talked about the preliminary numbers there. What I'll say there is it's, within the original water rights certificate, but as I mentioned, we are working with Ecology to look agency-wide at ensuring, water needs are, well understood before we actually need them. SEPA reviews, we will certainly coordinate those with FSEC, and as I mentioned, EPU is kind of like the big mother project with lots of sub-projects. So individual projects, if we determine need some sort of SEPA treatment, and it's not, say, on that yellow band of the formal regulatory approval. So the formal regulatory approval I see addressing really the thermal megawatt output, because that doesn't happen until you've done everything together, right? But these little things, let's say we touch a surface water system and it's going to be 2 years before the final implementation, right? Then if we need to be talking with FSEC earlier about that specific little scope associated with EPU as part of a SEPA process, we will certainly do that. And then here, I think this gets to the, what type of involvement does FSEC have? So this is just historical information. If you remember, towards the beginning, I talked about we've done 2 prior upgrades here at Columbia. The first was a 5% roughly update, and that was in the 90s. So we did get a resolution through FSEC for an SCA amendment. That increased the thermal power rating. And then our more recent one in the late 20-teens, as I mentioned, that was kind of a sharpening the pencil type upgrade. Not a whole lot of change. It's really just improving the accuracy that we measure flow through the system. And there was no substantial changes there. That we documented that conclusion. We sent a letter to FSEC recommending that some administrative adjustments be made to the SCA to reflect the new power level. But I don't believe there's any actual changes to the SCA that were made as a result of that. So, again, the EPU will be bigger than both of those, right? Because it's more power. And again, the amount of information, amount of components you need to change, or whether it's physical changes or operational changes, is substantially more when you're producing an EPU level of additional power. I think that's really all I have. So I'm happy to entertain questions, take comments. Again, I'm very appreciative of the time.
Council members, I'm happy to jump in with mine, but let's try to pay deference to all of you first.
I have one quick question.
Council Dean.
If yours are more substantive, can you talk about the plan and requirements for tribal consultation, please?
Someone from ENRP know that better? Tribal consultation for extended power upgrade?
Yeah, so as part of the BPA review, for the part of the review, they are performing their own tribal consultation. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me? The BPA portion of the NEPA review, I believe that they were planning on doing some sort of tribal consultations. But as far as on Energy Northwest side, we do have procedures that govern when to incorporate tribal folks into the conversation. We used to have a tribal liaison.
Okay, I can tell you, I know that our overall manager of the project has done, I'll just call it socialization of the concept at least. I believe she participated in a meeting of some sort of tribal representative meeting. I want to say it was last year, but if not, it was, since the point we truly launched the project, right? There was a phase where we were getting business case justification development, and now, we are in active working, and there has been at least some initial, discussions about this is what planning to do.
Your comments? So just to pick up on Council Dean's question, and thank you for both those, your earlier one as well. I know Energy Northwest generally has a robust number of channels of engagement with appropriate tribes based on a number of different projects and just being an owner, public owner in the community. So obviously we would encourage that. And while some of those broader efforts are ongoing where they're not specific to the project, then ultimately that is a key step. I'm pretty sure those who are closest to that in the organization are aware, but obviously, we should all make sure that's a priority and more specifically how. So a couple other just closing comments. As Council Dean noted earlier, and thank you for the patience for some who are waiting, on other project updates here as we are digging in, and ultimately probably the real first robust, more of a Columbia generating station discussion at FSEC, and maybe if not 50 years, at least it's been a while. So I think the curiosity and interest here ultimately is part of our just education and continued furtherance, knowing there are more of these issues coming to the council. Within all that, context helps, I think, but it also is always helpful to make sure, if not at the beginning, and usually that's a good practice, but certainly in the course of a discussion, what is ultimately our authority and role, right? Of what is FSEC's piece of this, knowing, especially when the NRC and other matters are not only beyond our control, but are also evolving. And at the end of the day, both Energy Northwest and the FSEC Council, on behalf of the governor and the state of Washington, we all live under SEPA. And so whatever, is evolving in both the nation's capital, and as I like to call it, the greater Washington here. Nonetheless, we need to work to try and create a bridge between those two worlds, knowing there might be a little more distance than perhaps in, an earlier decade. So we should all keep that in mind. And then thank you for the answer on water. It's obviously as critical and increasingly challenged in terms of its availability. And so no matter what it is, water is a very central question for any project. But the fact that you are approaching it as an agency level, where there is not a project by project conversation, but what is the cumulative sum of what, in this case, Energy Northwest needs from the Columbia River, I think is exactly the right approach. So encourage that, knowing that ultimately that conversation has its piece that shows up here within our jurisdiction and what we should be focused on. And I think water, as you can tell, will certainly be a priority of this council, or won't speak on behalf of my colleagues, but that's my sense. And then lastly, on the refueling outage coming up, I had the pleasure and honor to do a brief tour in last year's refueling. And so having seen that just orchestration of what goes on inside that building to facilitate, even if it's a minor changing of a switch and you're, quarter mile away from the reactor itself, it is very rigorous and complicated. So I'd encourage consideration, if it's not distracting from the work, if there was ever a time the FSEC Council should do one of those site visits, it's certainly during that next refueling. We'll leave that for other people who should work out the details of informing why and when, but it is quite a thing to witness, and so would encourage consideration of that.
It is, and I'm sure we could accommodate some sort of, whether it's during an outage or some other time.
Sure, we'll figure out the details.
Happily show some of the systems, up close and personal. I know staff was down there, just a couple weeks ago, looking at FSEC.
Yeah. Just noting for the future, so it's a good thing. And then relatedly, as some may be aware, but it's worth noting, I think, and then soon we'll move on, is not only do you have all these plans for your outages, the region plans around your outages to the day. And when is Columbia Generating coming offline? When is it coming back online? If that schedule is delayed by a day, it has a cascading effect into the region in literally keeping the lights on. So I just want to note that for the intricacies of ultimately and the interdependencies of our generating system and distribution and on from there. So, Council, those conclude my questions or comments. So, thanks for indulging me there. Other questions? Okay, Mr. Garcia, thank you for discussion. Unless you had any closing word, we'll wrap this up.
No, again, I appreciate that. So, thank you, and then I anticipate we'll be talking more.
More to come. Very well. All right, so at 2:40, we are going to move into our other project updates. Again, thank you for those who have been waiting perhaps a bit longer, but nonetheless an important issue, I think. So with that, we'll move to Columbia Solar. Council members, we do have two potential actions here, and as friendly reminder in your packet, not only are the orders that staff will help tee up here, should you wish to take action on these today, the motion is the council order and its number, and then the order approving transfer of control and authorizing technical amendments to site certification agreements. So that is the motion language should you wish to act accordingly. So with that, I will turn this to Keith Kenyatta, who will provide a brief update and teeing up of this potential action before us.
Chair Beckett, council members and staff. For the record, this is Keith Kanata, Deputy Director of Site and Compliance, speaking on behalf of Sarah Randolph, Siting Specialist to Columbia Solar. The regular facility update should be in your packet, and there was nothing non-routine to report. Following the regular June council meeting, we held the informational meeting for the ownership transfer requests as required by WAC 463-66030. The documents can be found on the FSEC website for anyone online who wishes to review. As no public comments were received following the informational meeting, staff have prepared the necessary documentation to support the council's actions. And we now kindly request that the council take action on this transfer of ownership request. Thank you.
Council members, are there any comments or questions you have of staff first before we move to potential action? Hearing none, Chair would entertain a motion on the Columbia Solar Council Order number 363.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I maybe do have a question. It's maybe more for legal counsel. In just looking at the draft orders that we have before us and some of the prior orders where a transfer of control was effectuated, I noticed that the prior orders, I don't know that we need to do this, but the prior orders actually said we're canceling the prior siting certificate and replacing it with the the prior certificate and replacing it with the new one. This one is not doing the cancellation. It's just saying we are amending and adding or modifying the ownership. So, and just looking at the paper trail here, there was a little bit of difference between the two, and I think it's kind of redundant to say we are approving a new one and canceling the old one. Approving a new one, I think, by nature cancels the old one, but just I like fewer words, perhaps not obvious in the way I'm rambling right now, but just wanted to make sure we've dotted the I's and crossed the T's that the shorter version of the order is legally what we need to do here.
Yes, the way the rules address this is as an amendment. So yeah, I'm not sure I don't know what the practice was. I'm not familiar with the prior practice of canceling a certificate at the point of transfer, but generally what we do is just amend it to change the name of the certificate holder if that's the case. Not the case here because the certificate holder is remaining the same, but there is wording that acknowledges the fact that the controlling parent is changing. So that's the extent really of the amendment. So which I think is consistent with the applicable rules.
So you're comfortable with the order as
Yes.
drafted then, in light of Councilor Barrick's question, which I think is a good one. So thank you for bringing it up.
Yes.
Okay. And for the records, that's John Thompson from the Attorney General's office.
I realize I'm not following my own rules that I think I set forth a couple times ago where I say we should say our names before we go so that our court reporter can record who's actually speaking much more easily. So that was Brian Rybarek.
I'm not quick, but I listen. Yeah. So, all right, Council, what's your pleasure today? Council Pamplin.
Thanks, Chair Beckett. I move that we approve Council Order number 363.
Thank you. It's been a motion made. Is there a second to it, Council?
I'll second.
Thank you, Council Dean. Order number 363 is on the table. Is there any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of approving Council Order number 363, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? I believe that's unanimous from the Permanent Council. Thank you. So then we will move on to our next item, which is the Goose Prairie Solar Project, both an update as well as potential action similar to that which we just took up on Columbia Solar. And Keith Kenyatta will provide the briefing.
Good afternoon, and thank you again, Chair Beckett, council members, and staff. For the record, this is Keith Kanata, Deputy Director of Siting and Compliance, speaking on behalf of Site Specialist Sarah Randolph with Goose Prairie. The regular facility update is provided in your packet, and there was nothing non-routine to report. On July 7th, some of the council members and FSEC staff had the opportunity to do a site visit. Similar to the activity of the Columbia Solar Amendment request, staff held an informational hearing required by WAC 463-66030 following the June council meeting. As no public comments were received following the informational meeting, staff have prepared the necessary documentation to support the council's actions. And we now request that the council take action on this transfer of ownership request. Thank you.
Council members, any questions first before we consider the action?
One quick comment should have made that this is Brian Rybaric, council member Rybaric. One quick comment should have made this on the prior one as well. I thought the June 17th informational hearing, though required by WAC, was a very useful discussion. We heard from the new entities or the entities that are coming in, and I thought that gave a lot of context for the expertise and the work that they've done in this space, though maybe not having worked in Washington before. I think they showed that they have the requisite financial and technical capabilities to step into these shoes. So just wanted to put that on the record from my perspective.
I think that's an important contribution and definitely reflective of certainly what I experienced that way too. Council members, there's requested action before us. Chair would entertain a motion if there is one. And I can help right there. Council number, order number 364.
I move that we approve an order on application for approval of upstream indirect transfer of control of the site certificate agreement as set forth in Council Order 364.
Thank you, Council. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on order number 364. Any further discussion? All right, then I will call the question on Council Order number 364. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I think that's unanimous. Order is approved. Moving on to the next item of Badger Mountain and Joanne Austria Solar. I keep jumping, my pattern these days. We will move to Austria Solar, and I believe John Volz is with us. And I do want to thank both the team at Goose Prairie as well as those at the Austria site. It was a beneficial tour, as publicly noticed for those of you who track some of that with FSEC. That did, in fact, actually also see a member of staff from the State Fire Marshal's office attend, who was with us, and we had a couple of representatives. Former council member Mike Livingston from Fish and Wildlife was there, and it was a good time well spent. We appreciated it. So the fire marshal was general interest, but also some further ongoing work around battery storage safety and conversations like that. So despite that there is not battery storage at these projects, I believe. So with that, I will turn this back to you, Mr. Volz.
Thank you, Chair Beckett, council members, and staff. This is John Volz with Cypress Creek, representing the Austria Solar facility. Construction updates from last month. We completed the testing commissioning of the replacement equipment due to the thermal event that occurred back in May. I'll follow up on the findings from that in the lower section. The O&M facility had its water and septic connections completed, and so it is good to go for use in operations. Demobilization of construction equipment is ongoing. We had the removal of temporary BMPs and the installation of the permanent BMPs installed. Final performance testing began, and operational plans were returned by FSEC with comments which are currently being addressed. Pertinent updates with the installation of the permanent BMPs. The notice of termination request was submitted to FSEC on behalf of the Ecology Department on June 24th. We do have the ecology final inspection scheduled for next week, 7/21. Regarding the, current events of note, the thermal event findings and actions, I was able to provide some initial detail last month. We have completed the investigation and did confirm the findings that it was a single piece of a borehole assembly equipment that it became dislodged, pinched the portion of the DC cable, exposed the conductor, and a spark fell to the fire below. Once that the event was remediated, the facility was shut down, 100% visual inspection occurred. All equipment in the affected area was tested for functionality prior to the re-energization. The only significant impact was a single row that needed to have some equipment replaced. That was a string of DC cable and one solar panel. All of that equipment was replaced on 6/24. The facility was re-energized, brought back online with no issues. We did confirm that the single damaged solar panel was recycled. Due to the thermal event, we submitted a variance request to FSEC on June 16th, seeking approval to address the vegetation growth prior to the 7/31 restricted date, which we have imposed by our vegetation and weed management plan under the SCA. We received feedback on June 30th that conditional variance was approved, and we have mobilized mowing crews out to site to address the vegetation that has grown quite tall in order to reduce the risk of additional fire hazard. We do have water truck following behind the mowers, and we have personnel going in front to ensure that there's no rocks or anything that may be contacted to cause a spark. But those events are underway. We greatly appreciate the variance request so that we can remove this risk from taking place as soon as possible. Those are the updates for the Ostria Solar Facility. Does anybody have any questions?
Council members, question or discussion? Okay, we will move on. Thank you very much, Mr. Volz. Appreciate the update. Again, thanks for hosting us on site last week. We will move on to Badger Mountain, and Joanne Snarski will provide the update.
Thank you. This is Joanne Snarski, the siting specialist for the proposed Badger Mountain project in Douglas County. In July 2025, Avangrid, the developer, requested and was granted a 12-month extension on the application review by the council. At that time, Avangrid cited issues with site control, regulatory uncertainty, tax changes, and supply chain that were impacting their decisions on the project. Consequently, all project activities have been paused since that time. Late last Thursday afternoon, we received a request from Avangrid for a new 12-month extension, along with a continued pause on the project activities. This request would go through July 31st, 2027. Their request for extension specifically focuses on the need for them to evaluate alternative strategies for the project's grid transmission due to Bonneville Power Administration's delays with grid expansion and reinforcement projects. Staff are planning to post this request to the project website to solicit comments on this request. Details of the comment period will be noticed to the public in the next week. Staff proposed that the council consider the matter of the extension request at the next council meeting scheduled in September. Should the council grant this extension request, the project would remain on record as an active project. Staff would continue not to work on the project until a decision is received from the applicant to resume work. At that time, a new public informational meeting would be held to seek more current public comment on the application. Because the project has already received a determination of land use inconsistency, staff do not anticipate that the decision would need to be revisited by the council should the project resume work. Also, I requested that Mark Eilers, who is the Senior Director of Business Development with Avangrid Power, be available online for questions or discussion you may have at this time. Are you there, Mark?
Yes, I am.
That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Ms. Snarski. Mr. Eilers, is there any comment you wish to make at this point? And no obligation, but I thought I should make space in case you wish to.
No additional comments than what were provided in the letter and the continued delay of our transmission path called Cross Cascades North. BPA anticipated a construction timeline of 2028, which was recently delayed to 2032. So we're somewhat subject to BPA finishing out their cross Cascades North line. But that's just additional clarification that was in the letter.
Appreciate that. Yes, and thank you for the added detail in the current letter. So council members, I can make a couple comments, but first let me see if you have any questions for either staff or Mr. Eilers, who's with us. Mr. Pamplin, Council Pamplin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Narski, thanks for the overview, the explanation. Sounds like this will be on the docket for September. There's a byline here on our agenda that we may like to schedule a future special meeting to take up. Is that the additional informational meeting, or what is that reference?
I think that was placed on the agenda to provide that as a potential option if you thought it should occur earlier in September. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you. For the record, this is Amy Hofkemeyer. When the agenda was created, we weren't sure yet what Avangrid would be requesting, if they would be requesting an extension or if they would be indicating that they would terminate the project, at which point there might not be future action. And so it was intended to signal that there may be activity in front of the council at a future point, but until we received that communication, which we now have from Avangrid, we were hesitant to add additional specificity.
So it's moot ultimately at this point.
Correct.
Any other?
No, thank you.
Council members, anything else? Well, just to reemphasize, there will be a public comment period coming up. That comment period probably posted within the next week, just trying to call that out for any members of the public who may be listening. Ultimately, that'll go through the normal public notice channels of FSEC. For those of you on listservs, it's intended to be a 30-day comment period, and then the FSEC Council, after review by staff of comments and all those matters, we would then consider what would be taken up at the September meeting. So for those interested in Badger, FSEC Council meeting in September would be your time and place. Mr. Eilers, thank you for your presence today and included with the Columbia Generating Station briefing ahead of you. I guess as we work, with staff to consider the extension to the degree that it can be done, I think you started laying this out, Ms. Snarsky, where, if there are these bigger realities with the Bonneville Power Administration that are years out, then what should FSEC do in its consideration of extensions, or not, I suppose, since that's also ultimately an option. But knowing there are these longer term regional issues to be considered, all the while ultimately any specific project, considerations, including impacts that I know are part of the public record already, having not been a part of any of the earlier Badger meetings, that we try to minimize as much of that noise in the public and the community and with the Yakima Nation and the Colville tribes who have stated for the record that they do have concerns. And I don't wish to overemphasize those, but ultimately they exist, and we should, add that to the consideration of whatever an extension might look like going forward. So that'd just be my comments for today. I think more to come from all, but if I can answer any questions from council members about my comments or others, happy to do it. And if not, we would soon move on.
Yeah, this is Councilmember Rybaric, and I appreciate all those. I think that's an important process here. I'll just say it's challenging to hear and to see a letter that says that the BPA process is getting moved out 4 years. And that's I just make that comment here in the sense of that's a challenge that perhaps we'll be facing for this state and for a lot of other projects. I'm not really thinking about specifically this one. It's just that this is the context in which that issue came up. It's something that we're very mindful of at the UTC, and as we think about our work across a variety of different places, it's just a challenging fact to hear here right now. So just wanted to put that on the record.
Appreciate that. And I would just further add, it is an example of then why there's confusion about well, when and where should I provide my either support or concern or you name it around a project, which is no one's fault. It's just reflective of the different systems that feed into ultimately what each of us have to manage within our own lane. And it is definitely on display here. So I appreciate what you've raised, Council. All right, well, with that, thank you. And we will move on to the Carriger Solar update, and Ms. Snarski will also provide that update.
Again, thank you, Chair Beckett. For the record, this is Joanne Snarski, the siting specialist for Carriger Solar Facility in Klickitat County. On June 23rd, FSEC received the following pre-construction draft plans for the Carriger project: the vegetation and weed management, the habitat restoration and mitigation, and the initial site restoration plan, or the ISRP as we call it. The first two are currently under review by agency partners at Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the ISRP has been sent to the Yakima Nation for their input, as required by the site certification agreement. The plan will also be reviewed by our consultants to ensure compliance with the site certification agreement. As a reminder, per WAC 463-72-030, the initial site restoration plan must also be approved by this council. This plan identifies, evaluates, and resolves all major environment and public health and safety issues and includes the provisions to fund those efforts upon termination of the project. Once our initial reviews are complete, we will provide the ISRP to the council for your review. Prior to council action, we will post the plan for public review and a 14-day comment period. We anticipate this comment period will open the week of August 24th, but we'll notice the details to the public once this is finalized. I'm happy to answer any questions or receive feedback.
Council members, any comments, questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Snarski. All right, moving on to the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project, and Maria Belkina will provide the update. Let me first thank all of the council members, both our permanent council members and especially our project council members who attended our consultation with the Yakima Nation last week, making use, the first use of the new law that went into effect on June 11th, signed by Governor Ferguson and obviously passed by the legislatures. We want to thank them for that act unto itself that allowed that meeting to go forth. There was an important discussion with the Yakima Nation, and obviously most of that is kind of left in that moment, but it was a good exchange, and I want to recognize that too here in public. And with that, I will
Chair, may I ask a question, a procedural question?
Sure.
I noticed that while we were doing consultation with the Yakima Nation, that they went into executive session, their council went into executive session. I'm curious, therefore, our ability to discuss things that happened in that consultation as a council. Is it limited due to our being a public meeting?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely important. Further clarification, so thanks for that. And also let me note more of a process moment, but as chair, I'll just take it beyond my note I made that I was going to look to Mr. Walker and Mr. Lowe about, but let's move CRT up higher to the top of the agenda out of respect to our local project council members, and no problem for today, but thank you for hanging in there, project council members on CRT, and I think we can just try to rack that more at the top of the order for project updates going forward. So with that, Maria Belkina for the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Beckett and council members. For the record, my name is Maria Belkina, siting specialist assigned to the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project. Since the last council update, staff have continued reviewing the applicant's responses to data request number 1 and the supplemental project materials. The applicants provided expanded jurisdictional specific land use information for the proposed route. Staff believe the current record contains sufficient land use information for the next stage of review and do not anticipate issuing an additional land use data request at this time. FSEC staff have also continued outreach to local jurisdiction regarding their interpretation of land use consistency. FSEC is preparing to open an additional public comment period focused on the updated land use materials to provide the public additional opportunity to comment on land use ahead of council action. Following that comment period, the council can determine whether any additional activity is needed before proceeding with the land use consistency determination. On July 7th, FSEC participated in a government-to-government consultation with the Yakima Nation Tribal Council. The discussion included cultural resources, water quality, electromagnetic fields, aquatic resources, and other potential project impacts. Additional tribal consultation is planned with the Confederated Tribes and of Grand Ronde later this month. FSEC staff also completed a field review of the proposed route upland portion with the Department of Ecology and the applicant's wetland specialists. The team reviewed 19 wetlands and discussed potential impacts, avoidance measures, and additional information needed. Staff are currently coordinating with Ecology regarding its technical comments and follow-up recommendations. Coordination is also continuing with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Oregon Department of Energy regarding the NEPA and SEPA environmental reviews, project schedule, technical studies, cultural resource review, and opportunities to reduce interagency duplication. In addition, FSEC has participated in the applicant-led aquatic resources mitigation plan workshops and is coordinated with state resource agencies regarding questions, recommendations, and potential mitigation measures. Staff are distinguishing between measures required for regulatory compliance and mitigation recommendations to be considered during development of the SEPA review. That concludes my update. I will be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Belkina. Let me first, if I may, just emphasize one thing. Oops.
Microphone. Let me just emphasize one thing that's coming, and Ms. Belkina spoke to this. The land use component of the FSEC process was not, complete, and nor was it intended to be for those of you who helped participate in the hearings in the communities, 3 communities last November. And obviously we have new council members, permanent council members, we have new project council members. So those data requests have been gathered, and that record is basically now more, I won't say complete, but it certainly is more robust as to that information for the council's review, knowing this is an ongoing review. So this is one step. So that information will soon be coming to you, and as you have a chance to both review it, but also what other steps should we take with communities in mind, and or just the record being built itself on land use consideration, that's what's coming in the fall. And we've not made any decisions yet about what that process might look like in terms of in the community or online, or what works best for knowing we have various attorneys and other community members that want to participate. So that's part of what staff are working on, obviously with me as chair, but it is something that I certainly welcome input on as we go forward. I don't know if that's necessarily today, but we'll get more detail to you. So just wanted to give you a heads up for your reading packet and planning time that is coming on the land use material for the Cascade Renewable Transmission Project. So with that, questions or comments, council members? And we'll be sure and watch online for any of our local representatives who have their hand up. Okay. Commissioner Lucky, Council Lucky.
Yeah, thank you. As part of the reporting process, could we get a delineation or a list of what's still outstanding regarding the land use? Thank you.
Our staff able to help field that today? I think generally part of what was shared, Council Lucky, is that we have received that information. I think there are some that have chosen not to participate or not to respond. So I don't know if Ms. Belkina, if there's anything else you want to add to that, but that's what I think I've heard from staff.
Yeah, I think
Ms. Hofkemeyer.
If I may add, Chair Beckett, for the record, this is Amy Hofkemeyer. We do anticipate review of public comment. If any questions arise, we will, of course, raise that at the subsequent council meeting. But the more concrete steps that are in front of the council with respect to land use consistency are the review of the recently received information and public comment and the land use consistency determination. The council may elect to seek additional information, hold additional hearings, request additional input from the applicant or whomever, and that can all be discussed at your discretion. But I think we'll have more information following the public comment period that's projected for this next sort of time period where the council won't be meeting in August, but we'll take it back up in September.
Okay. But public comment periods would probably come further in the fall, not in September, I believe. Is that, or we're still in the midst of confirming?
I believe we anticipate holding the public comment sooner than that, starting that shortly.
Okay.
And then if from that public comment, more activity is identified, we'll follow up with the council at that point.
Councilor Lecky, let me try this and see if I can also further interpret your comment or question. I think it'd be helpful to the council to know, hey, of the, how many jurisdictions are there now in scope to the project? Is it 10? Is it 20? Of that, whatever the number is, I'll say it's 20, right? 20 different jurisdictions that one or another have, connectivity to the Washington side of this project that is under the FSEC jurisdiction, Washington FSEC jurisdiction. Of the 20, 15 are active participants and have provided comments to the record. Some are now on project, are project council members. And, what are the balance of these communities have chosen to not reply, or if there's other categories. But Councilor Lecky, is that in part what I think you're trying to understand? Or improve what I've said, if possible.
Mostly, I guess I'd be interested, is there a local permitting process that this goes through in conjunction with the FSEC process? So that there's a local tracking of where it touches land. If that's not required, it's not required, but where it touches land, is there a list of things that are required for the permitting, I guess, is what I'd be asking.
Okay.
Because my concern is that this touches land in Skamania County, and, it'd be, as far as I know, there's no local process yet on how to do a project like this. So I just don't know how that works, dealing with FSEC and then, local permitting and zoning and things like that. So I just don't know how that interacts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is helpful. If Steph wished to make a comment in response today, that would be great. I think if you want to, bring that back to us as part of the other information, that's certainly.
I can speak to that now, if that's preferred. So the local requirements would be reviewed and functionally absorbed by the FSEC process. So any permits, grading, things like that, building permits are wrapped into the FSEC process. So there's no separate locally issued permits or approvals. Any conditions as they relate to zoning or other locally required permitting type conditions would be identified and included in conditions if the project were to be approved within a draft site certificate agreement and imposed through that mechanism.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments, council members? Seeing none, then we will move on at 3:15 p.m. to the Horse Heaven update. Amy Moon will begin the briefing, and I believe Sean Green may be providing an assist.
Yep. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Beckett and FSEC council members. This is Amy Moon reporting on the Horse Heaven Wind Project. FSEC staff prepared and posted the environmental review and staff recommendation for the State Environmental Policy Act or SEPA, review for the project site certification agreement and an addendum to the final environmental impact statement, or EIS, regarding an update to the micrositing proposal, which was released to the public for comment on June 26th. As reported last month, micrositing updates are associated with the HAB6 mitigation measure that requires the certificate holder to submit the project layout and design at least 180 days prior to construction. The comment period closed on July 9th. The certificate holder's proposed update to the micrositing proposal includes. This is just as a reference and reminder of what that proposed update to micrositing includes. There's 7 points. 1, a commitment to the use of turbine option 2, which assessed a maximum build out of up to 147 turbines with maximum blade tip height of 671 feet. 2, a reduction in the total anticipated turbine build out from 147 to 116 turbines. 3, a routing modification confined within the micrositing corridor to the project's generation interconnect line to the Bonneville Power Administration that we fondly call the BPA at the Weber Canyon Switchyard to accommodate a shift in the location and orientation of the switchyard. 4, a shift in the location of several project substations and switchyards to accommodate the updated wind turbine micrositing and BPA infrastructure. And note the substations and switchyards will remain within the micrositing corridor with no increase in footprint. That's an important note. 5, potential elimination of a proposed switchyard adjacent to the planned BPA Beaufort Canyon switchyard. 6, an increase in the total length of 500 kilovolt transmission lines accompanied by a decrease in the total length of the 230 kilovolt transmission lines, resulting in less project transmission line total length as assessed in the final EIS. And 7, the alteration of a proposed underground transmission line crossing of Interstate 82 into an overhead crossing. During that comment period, FSEC received 107 comments, and Sean Green, our SEPA specialist, has a summary of those comments. And before Sean gives a summary, do you have any questions on what I summarized?
Council members? It's over to Sean.
Great, Sean.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Beckett and council members. This is Sean Green, SEPA specialist for FSEC. As Amy Moon mentioned, staff had been engaged in reviewing the public comments received regarding the addendum to the final environmental impact statement, or FEIS, for Horse Heaven that was issued on June 24th. While staff have not yet completed their review of the comments or made a determination as to whether the addendum needs to be revised to address any of the concerns raised in those comments, there are a number of common responses that we've seen that I will share with the council here. Several comments expressed general opposition or general approval of the Horse Heaven project. A number of other comments identified environmental resource impact concerns related to the project in general, rather than the project updates that define the scope of this addendum. The general project resource impacts have already previously been assessed in that FEIS. Specific to the contents of this addendum, one of the widespread concerns was that by committing to the use of the taller option 2 turbines described in the FEIS, the certificate holder was increasing the height of the proposed turbines beyond what was considered in that environmental document. These comments recommended that FSEC complete either a new EIS or a supplemental EIS to assess the environmental impacts of the taller option 2 turbines. FSEC staff fully appreciates that taller wind turbines have different environmental impacts than shorter wind turbines. The FEIS fully assessed environmental impacts associated with both the option 1 turbine layout, which was up to 231 turbines of a blade tip height of no more than 499 feet, and option 2 turbine layout, which was up to 147 turbines of a blade tip height of no more than 671 feet. Both turbine options were approved as part of the executed site certification agreement. The certificate holder's decision to use the option 2 turbines does not, therefore, represent a new or increased impact and is compliant with both the scope of the FEIS and the site certification agreement. Finally, there were several comments recommending that FSEC issue a supplemental EIS in lieu of this addendum to reflect a perception that the micrositing updates within the certificate holder's proposal introduced new or increased significant adverse environmental impacts to the project. FSEC staff have performed a thorough analysis of the updates and found that nearly all of the adjustments either do not represent substantial changes in the environmental impact analysis or, in fact, would reduce anticipated impacts. The one exception to this analysis is the proposed transition of an underground transmission line crossing Interstate 82 into an overhead crossing as a result of engineering, regulatory, and financial considerations. This update created non-significant changes in the environmental impact analysis, which were appropriately addressed in this addendum. As there is no site certification agreement amendment, as there is no site certificate amendment associated with this addendum, there is no associated council action at this time. The next council action that will include consideration of the findings of this addendum will be the council approval of the final construction plans, which is not anticipated in the near future. Are there any questions from the council?
Council members? Okay. Then I believe that concludes Horse 7. Thank you both for the update. Appreciate it. And with that, we will move on to Hop Hill Solar. Trevin Taylor will provide the update.
Hi, this is Trevin Taylor, SEPA Specialist for FSEC, on behalf of John Barnes, Siting Specialist for Hop Hill application. FSEC staff has received a supplemental culture resource survey report for the Hop Hill application from the applicant. This report was based on the updated project siting layout and the applicant intends to submit. Staff in the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation are reviewing the current draft of the report. The current draft will require additional data collection and an appendix before it will be ready for its limited confidential circulation to eligible interested parties. In addition, staff are continuing to work with the applicant on the submission of updated application materials for the Hop Hill project, which includes a revised and updated site action area that is still in development. Are there any questions?
Council members? Mr. Fayal, thanks for hanging in here with us if you're still on. And with that, we would then move on to Wallula Gap, and Trevin Taylor will provide the update again.
This is Trevin Taylor, SEPA Specialist on behalf of John Barnes, Siting Specialist for the Wallula Gap application. Staff are continuing to work with One Energy, the applicant, and the Yakima Nation Cultural Resource Program regarding the potential impacts identified within the Traditional Cultural Properties Report, which was conducted by the Yakima Nation for this application. Staff are working with the Department of Ecology to determine potential project modifications and/or mitigation that may be required for this application. The potential modifications and mitigation are based on information contained in the Department of Ecology's final Wetlands and Water Report. Are there any questions?
Council members, questions on Wallula Gap? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Trevin. We will move on then to our last project update, GoldenEye Battery Storage Project. And Joanne Snarski will provide the update.
Again, this is Joanne Snarski, the siting specialist for the proposed GoldenEye Battery Energy Storage Facility in Skagit County. Staff are continuing to assess the potential impacts from the proposed project as required by the State Environmental Policy Act. As discussed at the previous council meeting, in early June, staff received a letter from the Upper Skagit Indian Tribe informing us that they have traditional cultural properties that will be impacted by the project's location. At the end of June, we met with the Department of Archaeological and Historical Preservation to seek their input and advice on how best to address the concerns outlined by the tribe's letter. We are continuing to evaluate this input and anticipate reaching out to meet with the Upper Skagit in the coming weeks. May I answer any questions?
Council members, any questions on GoldenEye for today? Seeing Councilor Iberic.
Joanne, thank you for that. That the meeting proposed would be with staff, or is this going to be under the new law tribal consultation process? What's the nature of the proposed meeting?
I think originally we would meet with just staff.
Okay.
And does that sound correct to you, Amy?
I can help out if you want.
Please do.
So the Upper Skagit Tribe had asked for consultation before, and had noted, any concerns connected to me was not a concern, but at the time, our UTC representative accompanied that discussion and was the council person who served officially for the council. And so that scenario is still certainly, I'd say, likely, but that is not the next step. Ultimately, it is a reflection of sometimes based on a project or either FSEC's preference or a tribe's. Ultimately, it's really, us responding to a tribe. It is now there's two ways to go about it. And by example, I think for Cascade Renewable Transmission Project or a bigger, whatever it might be, there's an appropriate time to have a fuller council-to-council exchange, often at the front end rather than just at the tail end, which is traditionally where it's happened. So to me, that's the benefit of having both those options now. But it is based on different practices and preferences by each tribe, and that is at times diverse. So just a little further putting that on display. So thanks for the question. Okay, any others? Hearing none, we will move.
At least once director's update. I think it's primarily Mr. Walker who will provide this today. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Chair Beckett, Council and staff. For the record, outgoing interim director for FSEC.
Too big.
Absolutely. The title keeps getting longer every time. So just a few things that we wanted to touch base on during this portion. First of all, up on the screen is the proposed cost allocation model for Q1 2027, which is July 1, 26 through September 30 of 26. We had very minor changes to this cost allocation model. Horse Heaven dropped by 1% to a total of 9% of the share, and the Cascade Renewable Transmissions increased 1% to a 9% share. Other than that, there were no other changes to the cost allocation.
Council members, any comment for Director Walker? Hearing none.
Okay. Next, wanted to take a brief moment and just touch base again on the new strategic plan that FSEC has posted to the external website. One thing that we didn't do last time, because we didn't have it on the website at that point, if I recall correctly, it now is, and we just wanted to do a quick walkthrough as to where it was, so any members of the public or council or staff know where it's located. So if you bring up the external website as we have here on the screen, and you click in the upper right there about FSEC, and then click on History and Mission, and you go about halfway down the page, and there is an active link right there, 2026 through 28 strategic plan. And if you click on that, that will open up our one-page plan. So I just wanted to bring to the attention of folks as to where that was located. If they're curious, want to review it or what have you. So any questions?
Appreciate that. I think too, knowing we've got in the midst of a leadership transition and other initiatives underway, this is probably more of just a quick heads up, and on occasion when we touch on it here in this council meeting, knowing that we're trying to connect all this from the council, with the staff and on through, is certainly just what we want to acknowledge was here. And probably more to come this fall. But if there are any quick comments here or questions, happy to take them. Or just the road tour today on where to.
Absolutely.
And thank you again for all the staff, literally, of FSEC and other partners who just helped, shape this previously, including originally when the first plan got developed as the agency was spun out of the UTC. And thank you for not kicking us out of the building. So we appreciate that ongoing partnership. And nonetheless, here's the new official version. So thanks for everyone's work on it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I would add that it took us about 9 months to arrive at this final version that you see on the screen now. but I think it truly represents the agency, the work that we do, and the focus that we need to have in going forward to be successful. So, thank you. The last part that I just wanted to bring up today was a reminder that you had said right at the beginning of the meeting, Chair Beckett, on August 19th, we will not be having a council meeting. Instead, we're going to be having off-site staff development, team building and training that day. So we'll be using that to further the work of the agency and bringing our staff up to what we're expecting in the future as we move forward as an agency and as the SSEC family. So, but other than that, that concludes my updates.
Appreciate that very much. I'll just see if there's any closing comments from council. I had a little kind of what's ahead forecast I'll speak to on a closing note. Council Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Beckett. This is Council Nelson. I just wanted to thank outgoing Executive Director Walker for acting. I know that's a very thankless role, and you are a servant leader, and that's about the highest compliment I can give anybody who works at the state. I mean, and your knowledge, your approachability, your professionalism is a huge boon. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Hear, hear.
Thank you very much. We're not done thanking you. So we'll keep the short version today, and knowing this meeting's gone a little longer maybe than any of us expected. So I think it will be a busier fall. I certainly know for our, all of our council members, including project council, you all have day jobs and busy worlds and lives. And so we do our best to try and, not impact that further with FSEC workload, but there is some coming, I think, and nothing dramatic in that statement. Just, we'll be at it in the fall, and we'll get you as much, more heads up with more detail of what that actually means. But take that as the headline. You've, been notified and
warned.
Yes, and so if there are any periods that council members, especially permanent council members, know that we should just try to navigate out of, that is timely as we go into the next few weeks and onboarding a new director and all those normal things. So, with that, I don't see any closing comments. So we are adjourned at 3:33 p.m. Thank you, everyone.